have more degrees than a thermometer.
When you're engaged,
stands for their interests.
There's a lot of
Your
planning.
daughters will be here and you
I
will
believe
be first.
in mental health.
Sure that we have mental
We travel together on the path to intentional leadership, one conversation at a time. We go down a new road of insight with an expert guest who knows what it takes to navigate the opportunities and challenges of leadership. Why? Because they've already been there. So grab your compass and whatever else you need, and let's set out, leading the way.
Welcome to another episode of Leading the Way. I'm so excited to have you. And today I have a guest that has been a guest before, but not on Leading the Way, on IMCAN Connect Symposium. And he is a wealth of information. Today we have Nate Teitel from Anypath Technologies, who's the owner of Anypath Technologies in Ferndale, Michigan. And he works with small businesses, mid-sized businesses as well, to help them make smarter tech decisions. And we all need that, right? So grab your tech questions, whatever you've got going on in that mind of yours, and let's get started. I'm going to have a lot of questions for you, but first, hi, Nate. Welcome.
Hi, Nagam. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
And no, actually, I appreciate you coming on because I have a lot of questions for you. Last time you came in at the IMCAN Connect Symposium, you presented, and we had so many questions for you. And I'm so happy to have you now, so we can, go ahead and address some of these questions. But let's first start with your journey. How did you get started with Anypath Technologies?
My career took a couple of winds and turns to get here, but I've always been in and around technology. I think as a millennial, most people of my generation can kind of relate that we were born into it and thrown into it. So big member of the Google Academy, but originally I started working for telecom companies as account managers and outside sales reps and other things, and product specialists for phone systems and tech and software. And then that journey took me to become an independent software consultant and consulting with small to mid-sized businesses on making the right technology choices for their company. So whether that be internet circuits and phone systems to Microsoft environments and Google environments, that led me to creating a IT help desk, and linked up with a couple friends and business partners to help really kick that journey off. And here we are a couple years later, made it through the tough phase of the initial part of entrepreneurship. Things are a lot more smooth sailing now than they were, and excited to be helping a bunch of businesses around Metro Detroit area predominantly with making wise and secure tech decisions for whatever environment they happen to be in, which there's a lot of crossover between them.
Yeah, and I bet you get a lot of specific questions on. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm a small business owner, and I started out. I'll call myself tech savvy. I, have a little bit of a know-how, but there are a lot of things that starting out as a small business, I never knew that I needed. For example, a website. I didn't know I needed a website, or even when having that website, there's some things that came up later, like a little chat widget, and to help connect with customers, and there's just so many things that you don't even think about as part of the tech needs. What kind of questions? I'm just curious. What kind of questions do you get that you'd help with?
So really all kinds, and I do think you're tech savvy. I would consider you a pretty powerful power user of a solopreneur over there. I know you use a lot of different tech. You're using tech here, and you're into AI, and you're doing social media posts, and you're a user of a lot of different things. So I really appreciate that. And we have a lot of clients that are like that too. And starting a small business is tough. Technology is certainly a component to that, as well as if and when to staff, and how to make things scalable and predictable in your company, while chasing revenue, which is of course the idea. But yeah, the questions that we get are frequent and pretty diverse. So anything from, for somebody like yourself, I actually, I hope you don't mind me using you as an example, but
Not
one
at
of
all.
the emails that your staff member sent me went into my spam folder. That's a perfect example of something that is a day-to-day business issue that's relatively easy for my team to solve, but really difficult for businesses to understand. So there's certain things that I would encourage every business owner to do themselves, which is, get acquainted with the technology, use the most of the package you have, understand what you've got, go to YouTube University on all
Mhm.
the tech tools that you have, and find some people that are talking about the things that you can do. And if you hit roadblocks, have a good tech partner to help out and to free those up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not, I'm not a graduate of YouTube University, but I'm still a student.
Students of the
But it
way.
certainly has helped a lot. There's some steps that I'll be honest with you here, and I'll tell you. I had when I started out, I used to use Squarespace as my host for my website, and
Mhm.
then I navigated into another platform, Gold Star Pro, which I believe that they use Go High Level.
Okay.
Um, and had how did I transfer my domain? Um,
Mhm.
I cannot tell you the steps because I, went to YouTube and I followed step by step. It was successfully done. Can I
Perfect.
repeat the process? Absolutely not. And
Yep.
this is where an expert is needed because this is such a sensitive thing to do. And if you do one little thing wrong, and there were so many steps, I'll tell you. I mean, I don't need to tell you. There, little dashes and whatever that I needed to put
Mhm.
in. Oh, what if I get this wrong?
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, it's
that's
it's a little scary.
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk first. Let's talk website realm
Okay.
for small businesses, and then I really want to also talk about some other tools such as AI and
Mhm.
the vast world of AI now that's available to small businesses that can help them out. So, in
Sure.
terms of a website, what's the simplest what's the simplest way for first of all uses? Let's talk there because I'll
Mhm.
tell you, I talk to a lot of small business owners who think you know, a social media account is enough.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think it depends on your business. And if you're kind of an influencer or a solopreneur, you can get away with quite a bit less than you can if you have, more of an established business and you're doing business to business traffic and you want to validate your image. A lot of web pages are informational. So,
Mhm,
we build websites at Anypath, and most of them that we build don't serve a functional purpose other than to educate um, the visitor on
mhm,
what it is that you do, a little bit about you, and speak about yourself in a way that you can't do in person for a casual viewer or somebody that's interested in your service. And then really it's driving them to fill out some sort of engagement. So tracking their contact form or a way to communicate. You mentioned a chat bot, a great way to engage with the website if that is available. But not everybody needs an advanced web page.
mhm,
Sometimes a single page will do it. And I would say for business startup that is bootstrapped and you're kind of funding this as a side venture or you just went off on your own, something like you did with Squarespace or Wix or even GoDaddy has a web builder, is really a great place to start. You can always reinvent your web page and do other things in the future, but don't have analysis paralysis or be
mhm,
afraid to create something that you don't think is perfect or that doesn't have enough or that doesn't look like your competitors. Really, just putting yourself on the web is the first step, and
mhm,
then as you get more established, the idea is that you can funnel more visitors there. So if you do want to have more of a marketing presence, or if that's part of your business, if you're a business coach and things like that, if you want, or if you're a local service provider for an area, and you're doing organization or cleaning or something like that, or plumbing, and you want to drive traffic organically, then you can start adding on things like SEO services and other things.
mhm,
And that's about the friction point that I would suggest maybe looking at redoing a website into more of a formal WordPress page, it probably is my recommendation for most of the sites we build.
And that was going to be my next question about SEO. If I'm a business that thrives on, I have services that I want people to find me. I want people to search for me. Well, not search for me, but when searching for my specific, service that I offer, I want people to be able to find me, and at least the first page. I don't have to be at the top of it. So what do you recommend for that?
Yeah, so SEO it's tricky. So the first thing that I recommend is if you're going to do SEO, have a budget for SEO. So you can certainly self-serve, but it's a difficult practice. And I had a similar experience when I started the business. I wanted to do SEO on my own, and I actually wanted to offer SEO as a service to clients as a value add for some of the things that we do with websites. And I went through some online training and some other things, and very quickly you find out that it's very difficult. There's a lot of things to it. It requires an active practice. So if you're the type that is, consistent with other forms of marketing, like you are really good at posting on social media every morning or 3 days a week or other things and getting your brand out there, SEO is something that you can self-serve, but it's a very active practice that takes time. And it takes a little energy to convince, essentially at the root of it, you're convincing the Google search algorithm, and more recently, the AI search algorithms, to populate your name when someone searches for a thing that's related to you. So usually those targets are, you have to decide whether you're geographic based, if it's local, regional, or national. National requires a little bit more effort and for you to get out there. And then also doing some research on the competition that is competing for the same SEO search terms that you do. So, if you're doing business consulting or coaching, ranking highly for business coach in Detroit or Chicago might be pretty challenging. You might end up on page 10 no matter what you do, because there's, 1,000 coaches in that area or something like that. So you really want to understand what the competition's doing, which search terms to really go after. And then if you can, like all, good businesses or all business coaches will probably tell you, try to find a niche that's not so common that you can really target that niche with SEO and drive traffic that way, because that might be a better use of your ad spend.
And not to give away the big secret about SEO or but when we started talking about it, I said SEO and you started talking SEO, but we didn't actually even say what SEO stands for and
sure.
what are some of the things involved, and maybe just a little bit about how to get that going.
Yeah, of course. So SEO is search engine optimization. And what we typically will associate with SEO is when you Google something, what do you see? So if I, like the example that I gave you, if I searched business coach in Detroit or IT company in Detroit, the ones that are at the top of the list have jumped through some hoops to get to the top of the list. Some of those hoops involve paid advertisements, which are the ones at the very top, who pay for Google sponsorships and things like that, whatever search engine you're using, usually Google. And then the ones that fall right below that will end up on page 1, like you mentioned, are the ones that have invested in good SEO hygiene, which very similar to working with Instagram or Facebook. There's a science to getting your name out there and getting those engines, including Google, to put you at the forefront instead of all these other competitors. So you have to do what it takes to make Google and AI happy, their algorithm, similar to an influencer would do on Instagram, to drive your rankings to the top. And that's a little bit less, it's a little bit less of an obvious practice than you'd think, actually. There's a lot to it. There are some things on your website itself that can do that, called meta tags. And meta tags is essentially a short description of what the web page is. So that, along with your website name, even what you choose to name your business and advertise on the internet, those can all go into this algorithm that Google uses to publish you more or less frequently. And then doing things like blog posts that will backlink to those pages, and subscribing to blogs and posting your information on other people's blogs that backlink to your pages. Those are all things that the Google algorithm says, oh, hey, Nagam's doing this right. I like her. She seems like a legitimate business. She's in this place, this place, this place, this place, and this other company isn't. So I'm going to move her up the rankings for this thing.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work, and it needs someone specialized to actually do this. And I have, I'll tell you, I have myself, gone through the YouTube and the Google search, and I've tried to do some things, but it's like you mentioned, um it's an it- it's an everyday effort that you have to put
Mhm.
in. And most business owners, I don't think, have, especially solopreneurs and small business owners, don't have the time for something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really worth investing into, especially if the business requires that kind of thing. It requires you to be found for people to find your business. And
Yep.
and the other thing too, linked to this, that I want to ask about is how important is it to have a Google business profile?
Very important for the purposes of SEO, and I think very important for the purposes of just doing business in general. I have encountered quite a few companies that either have one, they have one, but they don't have their reviews turned on, or
Mm,
they have one and it's not linked to a website, or they have one and the picture of it is, a garbage can in the back of the building that they haven't looked at for a while.
mm,
Um, so very important, because I know my shopping behavior, and I think that echoes a lot of consumer shopping behavior, is when I'm looking for a new restaurant, or if I'm looking for a new business vendor or anything like that, or if I'm even shopping on Amazon for a new, grill tong or something, um, I'll go in and I do pay attention to consumer reviews. So it is extremely validating when I go and I'm looking for a new company, a print shop or something like that in my area, to go and I see that they have a professional image of themselves and a little
mm,
example of their work, and maybe 20 different reviews that say how nice of a job they did and how personable they are. um, and I might look a step further, and if I'm leaving one vendor and going to the next,
mm,
I might actually look at their reviews very, very detailed, for a specific term. Slow, bad experience. Depending on what the business
mm.
is, uh, turnaround time, or one of those keywords could be important, and one of your reviews could highlight something that is just the thing that someone needs to call you.
Mhm. Yeah. One of the other things too, and that when I'm searching, obviously now some of the apps allow you to do search. My favorite search app on my iPhone is my Maps application, because it doesn't just give you location; it gives you everything you need, including website, including an
Hmm.
order, right? If you're ready to order. But one of
Yep.
the things that I find, this is what I wanted to know, and really briefly, because I really want to get into to AI, is is Yelp,
Okay.
as compared to, if you were to compare being on Yelp as a business versus Google, having a business Google profile, which would you recommend more than the other?
Well, it really depends who you're targeting.
Mhm,
I think if you're targeting consumers, Yelp is still a very respected, source of knowledge for user reviews and other things. I know Yelp in the restaurant industry is big. I know for consumer businesses, it's a little bit larger. Um, and it's, frankly, it's a little bit of an older technology. It's an older crowd.
mhm,
If I'm speaking to, my generation and younger generations, do I think that they're going on Yelp and checking reviews? Probably not.
mhm,
Do I think it's still relevant because a lot of business owners are, you know, not in the same generation as me? Um, I certainly do. But if I were to pick one of the two, depending on my market, of course, for the market that I'm going after, I stick to Google.
mhm, okay,
Yep.
alright. Thank you for that, 'cause I always wondered what the difference was. Um, alright, let's talk AI.
All
Um,
right.
I don't even know where to start. It's I think last time you and I talked about AI, there's been so many more AI agents and
Mhm.
so much more development in that world. Let's start with let's say simple, real simple.
Yep.
Um, how can a small business owner who's not using AI whatsoever, what's the simplest way for them to where's the simplest place for them to go to find an artificial intelligence chat, let's just do chat,
Mhm.
um and how can it help them with their small business?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect and very relevant question. And it's something that I have a conversation with my employees and colleagues and fellow partners and clients and family members all the time about. I am a big proponent of using AI as much as you can. Obviously, there's a scary component to that too. 20 years from now, who knows how many jobs are going to be
Mhm.
replaced with AI as it gets more powerful. But for me and for a lot of other people, it's not a silver bullet, but it is an absolute weapon. Really, and just outside of business, just for structuring and for using the internet to produce answers. It used to be that if I didn't know how to fix something on my car, I would, or I guess maybe that's a bad example. Maybe I have a legal question and I go to an attorney for the legal question. If I don't want to pay for an attorney, I could Google it, and Google is going to give me kind of the same thing that we talked about. All of the paid listings first on my question and all the law firms that deal with it. And then it's going to give me all the top ranked SEO answers on my question. And then somewhere underneath that is the answer that I'm looking for. So I might have to shop around. It might take me a couple hours. I do a bunch of research, and at the end of it, I'm still not quite sure what the answer is.
Mhm.
Um, AI is a wonderful tool for legal. I'm not going to advertise it for legal advice. I will give my disclaimer here. Please do not use it as your attorney. But I have certainly used it to review and answer questions that I've had about legal documents that I upload into it, as well as creating legal documents for my business.
Mhm.
So if you want to create an MSA or a contract, or if you don't have a non-disclosure agreement,
Mhm.
you can use it to generate those things. And in a shockingly short amount of time,
Mhm.
you can have a conversation with this thing, just like you do an attorney, and say, hey, I'm looking for a non disclosure agreement between me and this other company, or I want a template for one. This is my company name. This is what I want it to include. It spits out something. And if you want it shorter, you just say shorter. If you want it longer, you just say longer. If you want it to include another paragraph about this, you say another paragraph about that. And it will also ask you questions about what I love that it's turned into is it will ask you insightful questions once it gives you the answer. So it's going to give you that answer, but um, like all great wealths of knowledge, it's only going to give you what you ask for. But then it's also gotten into a habit, or the new engines have started prompting you for more. So if
Mhm.
I ask to produce an NDA, it might ask, do you need this clause included? Or I noticed that you're in Michigan, or what state are you in? Maybe we need to rearrange this to fit your state's legal code and things like that. So I got off on a little bit of a tangent. That was a really specific example, but I'm not everyone knows that you can use it for things like writing legal documents, which is extremely powerful for small business owners because it's so expensive to do that otherwise. Um, but day-to-day things like writing an email.
Mhm.
I remember back, in my early sales career where I had a deal, I was about to close it. It involved all of this information. I was involving three different people. I had a spreadsheet, I had a proposal sheet, and I'm trying to organize my thoughts into a way that a decision maker can understand. And I would spend an hour on that email, making it perfect. And I would write it and I would rewrite it. And then, God forbid, like you lose a draft or something like that. That was before Microsoft 365, where everything was in the cloud. If you accidentally hit delete, you're like, oh my God, I just spent 45 minutes making this email. And now it's vanished. We live in a world where you can bullet what you have to say. You can put it into an engine like ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, and it will write the email for you. And that's not to say that you should have the AI engine writing all your emails, but as far as giving you 95% of what you needed the first time right away in 5 seconds, it's wonderful. I will not spend 45 minutes writing an email ever again. I will spend a maximum of 5 minutes writing that email, and the likelihood is that will be me writing it, throwing it in there, and then asking it to make changes like make it more conversational, make it more on brand. I want it to mention this specific thing. I want to remove this section. I don't like that point that you made. I want 5 different versions of this one sentence because I like all of it. I just don't like the closing. So it's an absolutely wonderful tool. There's so many things you can do with it. But anytime you are spending more than a couple minutes researching something, writing something, doing something meticulous, even trying to remove a background on a picture, it's getting better at that. You can at least try to throw it into an AI engine and ask it the question and see what it comes up with, and then talk to it about the things that are wrong with that and try to have it redevelop that for you. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, and what you just described with the 5 different versions of something without AI would take you hours
Oh yeah.
to actually sit and write everything and look through, then decide, make changes. I'm with you on that. I'm a big user of AI as well. I love brainstorming ideas, kind of, and telling it, okay, give me the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
I don't just want you to agree with me, and it tends to do that if you don't actually, if you're not, if you don't give it the right prompt, it
Yeah.
just agrees. And it does save. And I've done this where not just NDAs and contracts, but also little nuances on websites and automations, like that little consent line at the end of a form,
Yep.
or like, what's the right language to use? I'm not going to sit there and search, right? AI is going to give it
Yep.
to me right away, and that's what I love about it. It's just but you, like you said, I think people do have to be careful using that for legal purposes. I think everything has to be reviewed. We can't just trust 100% trust whatever spits out at us and
Yep.
just take it for granted. I think we have to review, especially if you're sending an email to somebody. I'd be very very careful sending whatever language. What am I going to tell this person? And
Yep.
I don't want to find out that I sent the wrong thing, but 100%. So you mentioned a couple. You said Gemini, ChatGPT, and then I think you mentioned another one. So
Microsoft Copilot.
Microsoft Copilot, which I have not used for some reason. I'm not I do use Microsoft for Word and PowerPoint and all that, but I'm not a Microsoft Copilot fan. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'll understand it later. But all right, I'm a small business owner. I go to chatgpt.com, and that's what that's what I use. That's what I start. That's what I go from there. Now, what other capabilities aside from, let's say, writing some of these documents? What other capabilities do you think um, does it help with, maybe answering customer questions? Does it have automation capabilities? Are there you mentioned a little bit about images. What else is there about images? Can it generate images?
Yeah, depending on the tool that you use. So I most frequent ChatGPT. So I would say I'm on there more than the other ones. I use Gemini for certain things. Gemini is better for stock image creation, in my opinion, than ChatGPT is. And I'll preface this to say too that I do use the free versions of these programs.
Okay.
If you subscribe as a business to these, you will get a a business model that will learn from the things that you do that can expand across your team. So I would say one of the biggest differences between the paid versions and the free versions is one, how often do you use it? Because the free versions will tell you after a certain time, a certain number of responses that you've exceeded your limit on the most advanced language model that they have, and then they'll bump you down a model, which is not in and of itself a terrible thing. You can still use the engine for certain things. Maybe not for images and some of the newer, fancier features from newer models. But ChatGPT is my go-to. I use it on my phone all the time. I love that you can sign in with your Google account. So most of us have a Gmail email and a Google account that we can log in that way. You can log in directly through that. You don't really need to waste a bunch of time signing up for it. And I have that linked that way. Things that it can be used for. I'm trying to think of the things that. Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna look at the things that I've used it for recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And then now I think it can connect with, it can have integrations. I was playing around the other day and I found there's integration to one of my favorite tools, Notion, where it can actually read. If I tell it to go read one of my Notion pages, it's going to read it and then come back and bring me info, which I would, ooh, yes, finally.
Yep. So a couple examples that I'll give is, so I also co-own a recruiting and staffing company, also in Royal Oak, Michigan, called S4L Partners. And we do domestic US placements, just like a standard recruiting model. And then we also do nearshore placements to companies that want to outsource some of their operational positions that can be remote for less expensive labor, essentially. So we're doing some work kind of building this company. This company is a little bit newer than Anypath. And I'm looking at my recent ChatGPT prompts here because it saves your chats. Doing a lot of work on the website. So website framework design. We needed a process for closed sales to finance doing the handoff. So an example prompt for that. Let's scroll up to the top of here. I said, draft an email as a handoff from sales to finance for new staff so that we can invoice the client. This email should include the staffing start date, monthly rate, net payment terms, contact information, and a link to the client folder with the agreement and contact details. It should also include this, this, and this. And it generated the email template that I now use for that purpose. I also used it. We're creating a cold email marketing campaign at that company. And I used it to research short but punchy domain names, including S4L Partners. So it came up with a list of 50 that were, go S4L Partners and get S4L Partners and connect with S4L Partners, so that we could very easily just choose from the list and build a campaign that way instead of thinking about them for hours. So these are just some examples that you can use. I've certainly used it to review contracts, complicated contracts that clients send me or that I don't understand. I will throw a clause in there and be like, translate this into layman's terms, and it will do it. In addition to helping me craft responses to it if I want to change things or redraft them. Keep falling back to the legal thing because it's so cool. Let's see what else we use this for.
Well, earlier you mentioned when we were talking about search engine optimization, you also mentioned now we can actually search and find through ChatGPT, which is really, interestingly enough, just recently I had someone actually find the podcast, this podcast Leading the Way, and actually, send an application for me to review. And I'm reviewing the application and looking at the source because I like to know where people find me.
Yep.
And lo and behold, chatgpt.com.
That's so cool.
Yeah. and so, but I don't know how it ended up there. That I have no clue.
Well, I think that means you're doing a good job at massaging the algorithms. You know, your marketing campaigns are pretty frequent. You know, you're active on marketing, you're active on social media, you're active in email campaigns, and I think you get out there a lot of content. So the more content you put on the web that backlinks to you, ultimately the more successful you'll be. You know, you have YouTube channels, you're on social media, you're on email marketing, your website has got a good seems like it has a good web reputation. So that's how these engines find you. And if
Mm.
you're ever really wondering how it found you, you can click on the little, whenever it gives you an answer, there's a little a link at the bottom, and it will actually show
Mm.
you the method that it used to find you. And it'll usually be
Oh.
through a reputable blog that is recognized with, um, you know, high value on Google and AI
Like
engines.
medium.com, because I'm on there.
There you go. Yeah, that
Okay.
might be it.
Okay. Wow, cool. Oh, thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
I've been trying to figure this out.
Yeah, and the person has a chat history too. I mean, if you have a good relationship with this person, or if you're developing that, you can ask them to look at their chat history where they found you and send you, you know, the snip of the little link
Mm.
icon next to it just to see where exactly, you know, if it was ChatGPT, where they found you online and what drove them to you.
Wow, really, really cool. So how can the other part of the question to that is how can AI help with SEO, or does it?
So it can certainly help you with strategy.
Mm.
And it can help you create things like blog articles if you don't want to sit there and write them yourself. And I think what's important about SEO that I didn't realize until running an SEO team is it's not. I hate to even say this. It is not so much about the content. It is about the tags and it's about the algorithm.
Mm.
So there's lots of successful people on Instagram that don't have great content. But if they use the algorithm to propel themselves forward, they can get a lot of people to see them and they can get a lot of people to like or click. It's just a numbers game. Very
Mm.
similar in the SEO space. If you create a lot of content and the content is linked back to your website or linked back to a contact form or something, some place where they can engage you, the podcast for that example, it creates more opportunities for the internet to direct them back at you, whether that's through
Mm.
ChatGPT or not. Um, essentially, the internet hasn't changed. The back end is the same. ChatGPT, all it does is it put artificial intelligence in front of the search engine, as opposed to the search engine just producing whatever it would natively produce. So it's a better, more informed version of Google that
Mm.
will very quickly query the entire internet database, try to find the best answer for it, and spit it out to you in a conversational way. Whereas Google really wasn't that sophisticated. It would just give you all the websites that related.
Mm.
You know, AI has taken that and they've summarized the information. You know, I think most of us who have attended, you know, college classes in writing or whatever degree you may have gotten, um, have had a research project where you've had to summarize a article or a book or things like that. It is obnoxious how well these AI engines can do that in 5 seconds. um,
Yeah.
and then if you want more information, you just ask. I want you to reference 3 other articles, or I want this to be shorter. I want it to be longer. I want more information on this thing, or this was interesting. Please expand on that. And it can do all that as opposed to just searching Google.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned tags, and I don't know if you meant hashtags or just tags, and I don't know the difference, honestly, but what I follow a lot of the social media updates, and because I like to stay relevant as well, and make sure
Mhm.
that I'm doing the right thing for my business as well. And one of the things I recently saw on Instagram, and I think LinkedIn as well, that they don't you no longer need hashtags
Mm.
to to tell the algorithm what you're talking about. Basically, make sure you have the right keywords in whatever you're writing, which
Mhm.
essentially is, part of building up your SEO, isn't it?
Yeah, and then there's a there's one step further is a meta tags on your site.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much of an ability you'll have to do that on a Squarespace and Wix. I would imagine that they probably give you the ability to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's like an add-on service or not. But when you build a website, um, it's it's important what you put at the top of the page. It's important what the page is called. It's important what your
Mm-hmm.
site is called, and it's also important what you meta tag the page to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working with a client on building. He's an executive search uh, partner here in Metro Detroit. We're building a website for him, and all of his pages will be tagged appropriately for executive search is kind of what he wants to be found for,
Mm-hmm.
but it might be like you know CTO search or CFO search. Different meta tags for different pages that
Mm-hmm.
if someone searches for something specific, not only are they gonna Google's gonna say, "Oh, a CTO is an executive. All right, I like this guy's site for that. A CTO is a CTO, and I found it in his site. I like that. I like that meta tag." And then search and recruiter and specific industry that he serves. All of these things kind of add up to say, Google's like, all right, check, 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 check. I'm gonna put him towards the top.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What I want to go back to AI for a second here because I think
Sure.
it's important to mention whenever whenever having conversation about AI is to mention the ethical uses
Mm,
and also the scary side. What not to use it for, and again, having the focus being small business owners. What do you think? I mean, and I'm sure you've ran across different uses of it and people asking you to help them with
mm.
different areas. So what is considered ethical and what's considered non-ethical when it comes to AI?
Well, that's a deep question. I think it really depends on the use. Anytime you pass information off as your own,
Mm-hmm.
there's a risk, especially if you're selling the information. So if there's been a lot of buzz in the news about AI generated imagery, and really what that is the engine is taking the database of all of the images that are out there on the internet, and it's saying, oh, you want a cat with an umbrella with a backwards hat on with a gold chain? Cool, I can do that. I'm gonna grab this. I'm gonna grab these reference images for gold chains and cats and umbrellas and backward hats, and I'm gonna throw them together in an image. And what it
Mhm.
ends up being is these artists that have created these images. There are certain aspects that go into this new image that you've created. Now, if you put this image on a coffee mug and you sell it on Etsy, now there's sort of
Mm.
sort of a dilemma on where did this image come from? If it was AI, are you advertising that, or are you taking it as your own? And was that cat paw not your cat paw to make? Was that a specific artist's rendition of a cat paw where you can now get in trouble for infringement on it? So that's certainly one example of the ethical dilemma of AI. And then the other thing is, you mentioned that AI can be used for good and used for bad. So, I run an IT company. Obviously, it's a crazy time to be in cybersecurity. Things are moving very fast, and I think the biggest troubling part of AI, especially as it becomes a lot more user friendly and common, is it is so much easier for me to write business policies and emails and other things, right? That's my business. um, it created a way for me to simplify my operations. It helps me connect with clients. It helps me do a lot of good for the businesses that I serve. I can write newsletters. I can write blog posts. I can write SOPs. I can write instructions. I can write emails. I can create images, I can design websites, all with the help of AI. Now, my business is not about, doing something to someone. It's about helping someone do things.
Mm.
If you flip the coin on that and you look at, nefarious actors that their business is stealing money or, taking your personal information or selling it or finding out, information about, you know, uh, children or, whatever it is.
Mm.
Now you take that and you amplify that with AI, and all of a sudden AI doesn't seem like a great tool anymore.
Mhm.
It's assistance to whoever needs it, and it doesn't discriminate on who uses it. So it can certainly be used for harm just as easily as it can be used for good. And we've started to see a lot of people have heard of the dark web.
Mm.
It's gotten some press in the past couple of years about people selling people's information and doing bad things on a secure encrypted channel. Um, on the dark web now is tools that were developed using AI engines that are being used to target businesses. So, we used to see ransomware and hacking and things like that be it was a very one-on-one effort. It was, I know that you're a bank. I want to hack and steal $100,000 and I know you have money. So I'm going to attack your defenses until I get in and I'm going to try to take the money. More and more of what I'm seeing is a downward trend in who's being targeted or a down market trend rather. Um, Propelled by these tools that someone can download a malware engine on their computer, and instead of targeting one company, they can target 100,000 companies, and they can send these bad emails and try to get access to their networks. And this tool will help them understand how they
Mm.
communicate and how they act, and it will inventory it. And it's in the same way that I use it to be more efficient, it's also
Mhm.
making the bad actors a lot more efficient. So that part to me is really scary.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think about that, especially when AI first came out, and a lot of people were playing around with different ideas, and there are some silly uses, and then there's the one thing too that I want to make sure that I bring up here is that while it is a useful tool, it's not a we also have to know all the functions of it and what actually makes it work, all the
Mhm.
water that's needed to cool down the data centers. And so we have to, while we're using it to help our businesses, which is great, lessen the time, and definitely it should be used reasonably, and,
Sure.
and not crazily. And I see a lot of people just use it for silly things, and just like, really, do you know where it's coming from? And then there's great use for this tool if we actually put
Mhm.
it to work. And there's so many different examples that you mentioned here that a lot of people don't know, and they're still handling everything on their own, where
Yeah.
they could be actually using some of these tools to help
Mhm.
speed things up. And I think that's a wonderful use of AI.
Yep.
And thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and the concern is certainly real. There's a concern about um essentially making supervillains, out there
Mhm.
with new tools to use, right, to target people and to do bad things. And then there's also a concern about the technology itself becoming too powerful
Mhm.
and replacing real jobs. We've already
Mhm.
seen that happening.
Yep.
There are companies that have fully embraced AI for better or for worse and have laid off departments of people, or have shrunk the number of people it takes to do things. And it's a concerning consequence of the technology. By
Mhm.
making us more efficient could potentially lead to less of us in the workforce doing the things that we need to do, especially when you look at newer technologies that are emerging like automation. You
Yeah.
put AI with automation and a humanoid robot, and all of a sudden you've got you have a really challenging thing in the workforce to compete against. It's something that
Yeah.
doesn't eat or sleep or take bathroom breaks. Um,
Mhm.
So not to get, total otherworldly on this, but it's a concern, and a lot of the
Mhm.
founders of these AI engines have come out calling for some restrictions and some oversight and some reform of just what this
Yeah.
means. Should we let it get to a certain point, or should we restrain what this is going to do? And let's do that before we lose too much of our workforce to being replaced by it.
Yeah, and I definitely no, I think this is really important to talk about whenever we're talking about AI. So thank you for giving it some time. And it shouldn't, we shouldn't replace humans with that tool because it's not 100% accurate. There's so many redundancies, there's so many inaccuracies in there. Even if you
Hmm.
do you ask it to do a web search and a deep search, there's always I've done this where I'm like, as an example, there's this quote that I don't remember verbatim by one of my favorite authors, Simon Sinek, as an example. And I tell it that, and he talks about, and I give it a couple of keywords that I remember, and it spits something out written so eloquently, and it's not even Simon Sinek's quote.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
is just completely made up. And if I don't have the, the will to go and do my own research on Google and actually find, the quote, I would just go with it
Yeah.
and attach it to somebody and say this is from Simon Sinek, and it's not. But
Hmm.
the point is that we need to review everything that comes out of it. It's not 100% accurate, and it's definitely a great tool to help speed things up, make things more efficient. But I still think that we need the human, uh,
Yep.
to over either oversight or uh, fact checking, whatever it is. I think we still need that.
Absolutely.
Um, can you believe it's 6:55?
I
This
know. I was just looking at
time
that.
went by so fast. I want to have you close by. What do you recommend? Somebody who's, let's say, they're a small business owner, they have employees,
Mhm.
and they have a lot of we have a lot of tools at our disposal. um what do you advise as small business owners? What would be something helpful to them? What message do you give? And two, where can people find you if they need help with any tech tools, software, you mentioned website design. Let me
Mhm.
have you first repeat that you help small business owners, mid-sized businesses with. Go ahead, Nate.
With basically anything technology related. So we do software, websites, we do custom software development, we do Microsoft support, desktop support, servers, networks, cybersecurity, anything you can think of. So you can find me at anypathtech.com. My information's down in the footer down there. Nate at anypathtech.com. You can feel free to shoot me an email. You can also find me on Google. I have a Google business listing that is reliable too. And if I could close with one thing of advice for business owners, it's something that I've been, I got to drink my own Kool-Aid, right? At both companies lately, and even with my family members, I've been challenging people and training people, a lot of people lately, on how to prompt accurately.
Mm,
And that's really the thing that requires a little skill. And what I would give advice on is create a chat GPT create a chat GPT account today.
mhm,
Don't wait to do it. Start asking it questions. It's very cool. And think of something that you've done last week that took too much time,
mm,
and just try to have it reproduce what you did. What you'll probably find is it will do a better job or give you new ideas about that thing in a very short amount of time, which is the perfect application for it. But when you're giving it prompts, the more context you can give, the better. So if this is a personal chat GPT account, if it's not tied to a specific business, if it's not learning what your business is, um, I would say, if I were to try to craft a client email giving them a proposal for a certain thing from Anypath. I would say, I'm trying to send a client an email. I own an IT company that does IT support. I think these things are important. We specialize in local personal service. We're a 24-hour help desk. I want this proposal to come across as conversational and casual, maybe a little funny. I want it to be short enough not to be boring, but engaging enough not to lose their attention. And I want it to say these things on it and give it bullet points. So if you give it a lot of context, you will get so much more out of it the first round. And then I know it takes a little, a couple of minutes to write that paragraph, right? But if you give that paragraph prompt, you're going to end up with a much better response. And then give it short feedback afterwards. Say, too formal, I want it more casual, or I hate this sentence, give me 3 options for that sentence. And then once you find one, I like that sentence, add that sentence back in and spit it out again. So you can give it some short prompts later, but you'll save yourself a lot of time by giving as much context about the situation that you're trying to solve as possible. And that's really how it's most useful, I think.
Yeah, and that's great advice. I love what you said about think of something you've done that took hours and then use Chat GPT for the same thing and see how long it takes. And then definitely with the different alternatives, give me 3 options for da 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 da. I love that advice. Thank you so much, Nate, for a lot. You gave us a lot today. And I hope those of you watching now or watching later, that you have been taking notes, because this is great stuff, especially for those of you who have, a small business or solopreneurs, do everything on your own. This is great information. And you can find Nate at anypathtech.com or his website, anypathtech.com. Thank you so much for joining us. And next month, I am having, we're closing the season of Leading the Way with the small business owners in my own mastermind group, which is really great. This is a small group of small business women, the small business owners who are, all group of women. And I am so excited to have that group chat with us. Join us next month. Nate, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you so much.
When you're engaged,
Stands for their interests. Or they
There's a lot of
Your
planning.
daughters will be behind you.
I believe in mental health.
Sure that we have mental
when you have
We travel together on the